Welcome to a game of Commander featuring the Commander 2013 decks, with Ronnie playing a Mind Seize and choosing Nekusar as his commander. Rob plays Nature of the Beast, choosing Gahiji as his commander. Kyle plays Power Hungry and chooses Sek Kuar as his commander. And Chris plays Evasive Maneuvers and chooses Derevi as his commander. Ronnie wins the die roll and starts the game by playing Island, Sol Ring, and Empyrial Sphere. Rob draws Forgotten Cave and plays Colony Garden, giving him a 0/1 plant token. Kyle draws Shattered Gang Brothers and plays Vivid Grove as his land. Chris draws Aether Mage's Touch and plays Simic Guildgate. Ronnie draws Uyo, Silent Prophet, and plays Rupture Spire, also paying 1 mana. Rob draws Homeward Path and plays Gruul Guildgate. Before Kyle's turn, Ronnie breaks his Empyrial Sphere, finding Swamp and Mountain and putting it into his hand. Kyle draws Restore and plays Swamp. He then casts Sol Ring and then taps a Sol Ring and another mana to cast Obelisk of Jund. Chris draws Island and plays Opal Palace and casts Simic Signet. Ronnie draws Nyx Guildmage and plays Swamp. Ronnie then is the first to play his commander, which is going to deal a lot of damage this game. Rob draws New Benalia and Street Spasm and takes 2 damage. Rob plays Homeward Path and casts Druidic Satchel. Kyle draws Stronghold Assassin and Terror Ravager and takes 2 damage. Kyle plays Swamp and casts Stronghold Assassin. Kyle then casts Curse of Chaos, enchanting Ronnie. Chris takes 2 damages and draws Kazandu Tuskcaller and Leaf Drake Roost. Chris plays Island and Kazandu Tuskcaller and then levels it up once. Ronnie draws Evolving Wilds and True Name Nemesis. Ronnie plays Mountain and casts True Name Nemesis, naming Kyle, and then casts Swiftfoot Boots. Ronnie equips the boots to the Nemesis and attacks Kyle for 3. Rob draws Jungle Shrine and Slippery Karst and takes 2 damage. Rob plays New Benalia, scrying 1 and leaving Celestia Sanctuary on top of his library. He then uses Druidic Satchel to reveal the Sanctuary and put it onto the battlefield. Rob bounces the Colony Garden back to his hand. Rob discards 2 cards and then passes. Kyle draws Plague Boiler and Deep Fire Elemental, taking 2 damage. Kyle restores the mountain that Rob discarded and casts Plague Boiler. Chris draws Transguild Promenade and Rubinia Soulsinger and takes 2 damage. Chris plays Island and casts Lin Jun. Chris attacks Kyle for 1 with his Tuskcaller. Ronnie draws Illusionist's Gambit and Mountain. Ronnie plays Evolving Wilds. Ronnie attacks Rob with his Nekusar and Kyle with the Nemesis. Ronnie casts Nivix Guildmage. Rob draws Vichu Ghazi and Baelith Woodcrasher and loses 2 life. Rob plays Jungle Shrine and casts Fires Yavimaya. Rob then uses his satchel, revealing Mossboar Bridge, and puts it onto the battlefield. Rob then hideaways Harmonize. Kyle puts a counter on Plague Boiler during his upkeep and draws Tooth and Claw and Night Soil, taking 2 damage. Kyle attacks Ronnie with the Stronghold Assassin, discarding a card and drawing a card due to Ronnie's curse. Kyle takes 1 damage from the draw and Ronnie takes 2 damage from the assassin. Kyle then adds 2 counters to Plague Boiler, blowing everything up. Chris draws Bane of Progress. Chris plays Transguild Promenade and pays a mana. Ronnie draws Viceling. Ronnie plays Island and casts Viceling, which deals 3 damage to Rob during his upkeep with 7 cards in hand. Rob draws Rampaging Bailoths. Rob then casts the Bailoths and then plays Colony Garden, giving Rob both a 4/4 beast and a 0/1 plant. Kyle takes 1 damage with 5 cards in hand, and then draws and plays Opal Palace. Kyle casts Night Soil. Chris takes 2 damage from Viceling from 6 cards in hand, and draws a Farhaven Elf. Chris casts a Farhaven Elf and gets a Plains. Ronnie draws and plays Swamp. Rob takes 2 damage and draws Naya Panorama. Rob plays and activates the Panorama and gets 2 beasts. Rob then casts Gahiji and randomly attacks Ronnie for many damages. But in response, Ronnie casts Illusionist's Gambit, forcing Rob to attack someone else instead. Rob then rerolls a die and randomly attacks Kyle, with the same creatures, only this time they get even bigger due to Gahiji's ability. Kyle exiles 2 creatures in his graveyard with Night Soil and 2 creatures in Ronnie's graveyard to get 2 1/1 Saplings. Kyle blocks the Beast token and the Plant token and then takes 10 damage from the Baloths. Kyle draws Hooded Horror, not taking any damage from Viceland during his upkeep. Kyle casts Shattergang Brothers. Chris takes 2 damage and draws Thunderstaff. Chris casts Karmic Guide and brings back Lu Jun. Ronnie draws and plays Command Tower. Ronnie casts Decree of Pain, destroying 10 creatures and drawing that many cards. Ronnie discards a bunch of cards and passes. Rob draws Crozian Tusker and plays Contested Cliffs. Rob casts Where Ancients Tread and cycles his Forgotten Cave, drawing from the Ashes. At the end of Rob's turn, Kyle exiles creatures from Chris's graveyard and makes 2 1/1 saps. Kyle draws and plays Mountain. Kyle casts Terra Ravager and Tooth and Claw. Chris draws Arcane Denial. Chris casts Bane of Progress, blowing up Rob's enchantment, and Kyle's Tooth and Claw and Night Soil, making the elemental 5/5. Ronnie draws Diviner Spirit and plays Island. Ronnie recasts Nekusar. Rob draws Forest Mountain and takes 2 damage. Rob cycles a land and draws Spite Bellows, and then casts Spite Bellows. Kyle draws Savage Lands and Mountain and takes 2 damage. Kyle plays Swamp and then casts Fell Shepherd. Wanting to take out Ronnie's commander, Kyle sacks a Saproling to give the Spite Bellows -2. But instead of shooting Nekusar, Rob shoots Kyle's Fell Shepherd instead. In retaliation, Kyle then attacks Rob for 10 with his Terra Ravager. Chris draws Stonecloaker and Basalt Monolith and takes 2 damage. Chris discards and passes. Ronnie draws Grixis Panorama and Nightscape Familiar. Ronnie casts Nightscape Familiar and then casts Diviner Spirit. Ronnie then bolsters his defense further by casting Propaganda, but Chris Arcane denials it in response. Ronnie then attacks Kyle with Nekusar, and Kyle blocks with his last sap. During Rob's upkeep, Chris draws Celestia Charm off the Arcane Denial, taking 1 damage, and Ronnie draws Terra Ravager and Annihilate. Rob draws Secluded Step and Crater Hellion and takes 2 damage. Rob cycles Secluded Step and takes another damage. Rob casts Crater Hellion, wiping the board except for Ronnie's Netscape Familiar, which he regenerates. Kyle draws and plays Evolving Wilds and then casts his commander. At the end of Kyle's turn, Chris casts Ether Mage's Touch, revealing and putting Rune of the Hidden Realm onto the battlefield. Before going to Chris's turn, Rob fights Rune with his Crater Hellion, killing the Rhinoceros Soldier. Chris draws and plays Temple of the False God. Chris casts his own Diviner Spirit, and then attacks Ronnie with his Bane of Progress, dealing Ronnie 5 damage. Chris casts his General also. Ronnie draws Mirari and casts his commander for a 3rd time. During Rob's upkeep, he fights Crater Hellion with Chris's Bane of Progress, killing it, and then declines to pay Hellion's Echo. Rob draws 2 planes and takes 2 damage. Rob plays planes and cycles Crozian Tusker, putting Forest into his hand. Rob then draws Boros Garrison and takes another damage. Rob casts Bayoth Woodcrasher and passes. Kyle draws Endless Cockroaches and Tempt with Vengeance, taking 2 damage, and then plays Savage Lands. Kyle then casts both of the cards he drew this turn, giving him 5 1/1s with haste. Chris, Ronnie, and Rob all put 5 1/1s onto the battlefield, giving Kyle another 15 1/1s. Surprisingly though, he doesn't attack. Chris draws Angel of Finality and Acidic Slime. Chris attacks Ronnie with his Spirit and Rob with the Bird Wizard, dealing Rob, Ronnie, and himself 2 damage after he and Ronnie both draw 2 cards from the Spirit. Ronnie draws Akum Refuge and Island and plays Island. Ronnie annihilates Rob's Baloth and draws Price of Knowledge. Ronnie then casts Price of Knowledge, which kills Rob, but only deals a total of 3 damage to Kyle, including Nekusar's effect. Kyle plays Mountain and casts Stalking Vengeance. Kyle then sends everything at Ronnie. Ronnie uses his 5 1/1s to block Kyle's big creatures and some of Kyle's 1/1s, dealing Ronnie a total of 21 damage, including the Stalking of Vengeance triggers. Chris takes 7 damage during his upkeep, and then takes another 2 damage when he draws Thornwind Fairies and Secluded Step. Chris plays Secluded Step, and then casts Acidic Slime, blowing up the Price of Knowledge. Chris attacks Kyle with the Diviner Spirit, and Ronnie with his 5 tokens and Derevi. Kyle takes 2 damage, and Ronnie blocks one of the 1/1s with Nekusar and takes a total of 6 damage. Kyle and Chris both draw 2 cards and take another 2 damage. Chris untaps all of his lands with Derevi's ability and Kyle's commander. Chris casts Angel of Finality, exiling all the cards in Ronnie's graveyard. Ronnie draws Bojuka Bog and Molten Slag Heap. Ronnie plays Molten Slag Heap and casts Opportunity, targeting Kyle and making him draw 4 cards, which is enough for Kyle. Ronnie attacks Chris with Nekusar, which Chris blocks with his Angel of Finality. Ronnie then casts Starstorm for 5. In response, Chris casts Stonecloaker, bouncing his Angel. All the other creatures die. Chris casts a Selesnya Charm at the end of Ronnie's turn to make a Knight. Chris then attacks Ronnie with his Knight. Chris then recasts the Angel of Finality, again exiling Ronnie's graveyard. Chris then casts Basalt Monolith and passes. Ronnie draws Incendiary Command and plays Bojuka Bog, exiling Chris's graveyard. Ronnie casts Uyo and Terra Ravager. Chris plays a Dungeon Geist, tapping down Uyo and attacking with his Angel, winning Chris the game.